Welcome to the Ending Sexploitation podcast, where we decode sexual harm and provide you with active solutions. I'm your host, Kaylee McNamara. All right, well, welcome back, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us again for another episode of Ending Sexploitation. This time I am joined by the illustrious Eleanor Gaetan, Vice President of Public Policy at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. Thanks for joining us, Eleanor.
Thank you for having me, Haley.
It's so wonderful having you on the podcast. This is our first time recording two people in the studio. We've had so many guests who are remote, so it's nice taking what would be like a hallway conversation and just sitting down and actually recording it is pretty fun. I'm excited too for this episode because this is a good news episode.
Yes.
So often we're just talking about really depressing things,
Of course.
and we just have great news to share about two important pieces of legislation that have passed. Before we get into that, can you tell me a little bit more about yourself? You know, you have been in this fight in many different iterations and ways. And so what brought you into this fight, and why did you decide to veer into public policy on sexual exploitation issues? So many people are passionate about sexual exploitation. They get involved in direct services or raising awareness. Why did policy grab you?
Great question. And we have to go to Romania for the answer because I worked for the U.S. Agency on International Development, worked for USAID as a local hire in Bucharest. And in my portfolio was a trafficking shelter. There were many women in Romania, Moldova, Ukraine who would be promised jobs of babysitting or elder care, waitressing in the West. And they wanted so badly to have experiences of travel because Romania was one of the communist countries where you were not allowed to travel. No such thing as a passport for a regular person. You couldn't even move between your counties without permission. So the Romanian women, as was true for that whole region, were so vulnerable to stories told of what they could be doing abroad. And they were lured into, in some cases, legal brothels in Germany, the red light district in the Netherlands, or illegal sex trade activities in Turkey or in any number of Western European countries. So the U.S. government helped create a detention center, basically, for women who were arrested and repatriated back to Romania. They were generally around between like 18 and 25. And I was looking to see, was our money well spent? Well, what I found out was that women were running away from that center so quickly because it was like a jail. It was a detention facility, and they'd done nothing wrong, just been tricked by their own dreams. They'd been lured and coerced by organized crime, gangs usually. So I was managing that program, and that's how I ran into the human trafficking issue before there was even a Trafficking Victims Protection Act law in Congress. So that was 1998, 1999. So it's been that long. And from there, the State Department came looking for people that knew how to manage money. So I came back to D.C. to work at the Human Trafficking Office at the State Department for 5 or so years. And then I was in this incredible position of seeing the NGOs around the world, so many doing excellent work, and some just raising money and putting it in their pockets, like some real fraud going on in the human trafficking area. So I was a appointee of the White House, the George W. Bush administration. So when that administration ended and the Obama presidency came in, I, like other politicals, left, and I went to work for the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women, an excellent feminist organization, the oldest human trafficking organization in the United States.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yes, founded before the TVPA. And it was an argument within feminism between women who said, my body, myself, and women who said, no, pornography is essentially abusive and exploitative to women's bodies, and we are lured into this system of abuse. So that disagreement created different organizations. CATW exists to this day under excellent leadership, and I worked there for a number of years. What I came to NCOSE to do, though, was the law center. So important to have a law center, a team of lawyers, experts in abuse, experts in exploitation, who are taking hard cases that no one else wants to touch. And legal change is crucial in the United States. And then we have an infrastructure. Every state has allies, survivor leaders, subject matter experts, people who really know their delegations, their state legislatures. So NCOSE is a great place from which to do public policy because of our network and because of the Law Center. These are really unique assets.
And why do you think policy is important for tackling sexual abuse and exploitation issues?
So many of the problems we face are not covered by law. And the success we are going to talk about, the Take It Down Act passing the House of Representatives last week, it's an example of where it's shocking, but it wasn't a federal crime until now to upload non-consensual, sexually explicit material, and it would get on the internet, circulate infinitely internationally, and there was really no way to get it down. So the Law Center here at NCOSE said they had a less than 20% success rate in issuing take it down orders on imagery which people had assumed was private, and then some partner, husband, boyfriend, we've seen every case, uploads it in the non-consensual material is circulating, and it causes ruinous impact on people's lives. Like, until you talk to the victims, you don't realize how many people lose their jobs, lose relationships, become agoraphobic, develop PTSD. They experience that lack of trust as being, they lose trust in the world. And so there's incredible stories of the harm caused to victims of image-based sexual abuse. That's what we refer to, image-based sexual abuse. Sometimes you run into the term intimate image abuse. We don't like that term.
Yeah. Can you share a bit about why we don't like that term? Because you do see that around a lot. Other groups use that. We're not feuding if a group uses that, but we just don't want to use it.
Because so often these are not intimate images, which just sounds like pleasant and beautiful. It's rape. It's the scenes of a woman's unconscious and she's being raped. And that's not intimate imagery. That is sexually explicit criminal behavior.
Right.
And it's uploaded and you can't get it down. I mean, what's shocking is that if I post a Disney classic, 2 minutes of a Disney classic on YouTube, it is immediately taken down.
Yes.
It doesn't get any circulation at all. Beauty and the Beast, I cannot personally upload that. It is because we have a regime that has agreed, our entire judicial system agrees on this regime of copyright protection. But our own images and likenesses, whether they are actually us or deep fakes, like AI-generated imagery, is not protected. That's wrong.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's so shocking. I had forgotten, or maybe I didn't even know that statistic, that our Law Center said they had less than 20% success rate when reaching out to these online platforms where non-consensual material was circulating. And that's shocking because that's when they're hearing from lawyers.
Yeah.
They're hearing from lawyers, and it's still less than 20% success rate. Because I think very often people assume that these problems are already fixed in legislation. It's shocking, like you said, how much of a gap there is, how much more legislation is needed on sexual abuse and exploitation issues, which just makes this Take It Down Act an incredible victory. And so let's talk about that. So the Take It Down Act, it has passed the House, the Senate, it's heading towards the president's desk. Congratulations. It's a huge achievement, a big milestone, I think, also in the formation of the movement against image-based sexual abuse in and of itself. Obviously, it provides so much relief to survivors. Could you just share some of the basic components of the bill?
Yes. So it applies to both real and AI-generated sexually explicit images. And it says it is illegal to upload these, and that online platforms have 48 hours to remove the images, and again, whether they are real or AI generated. And there have to be help desks where people are available to receive these complaints, so that instead of what is true for so many victims, they struggle to even find an email where they could send a request to take down material. Nick Kristof, when he did this famous Children of Pornhub article in December 2022, uncovered an extraordinary case where a 13-year-old girl who had been homeschooled on a farm and then new to middle school, she has a crush. She's never even kissed a boy. She has a crush, and he says, make a picture of yourself naked and undressed and send it to me, and I just want it for me and my phone. She did it. He uploaded it to Pornhub.
Wow.
She personally tried to find a way to to communicate with the company based in Montreal, found an email address, alerted them that she was just a kid. At some point, she tried to pretend she pretended she was her mother to try to get it taken down. When Nick Kristof met her in California, she dropped out of school. She'd become addicted to drugs. She was homeless and living in her car with a couple dogs. And this was the result of these images that were uploaded by a peer. That's illegal. Now, that's child pornography.
Right.
So that's another thing here. Child pornography has always been illegal. It shouldn't be circulating. And yet, platforms persist and allow it to circulate. And as you know, NCOSE has an amazing lawsuit against Twitter. Happened when the company was Twitter, where two 13-year-old boys are engaged in sexually explicit activity at the direction of a predator on Snapchat. The boys thought they were just producing pictures that would disappear immediately, the myth about Snapchat. The predator was recording a video that was uploaded to Twitter. When the parents found out about this, and luckily the mom intervened fast enough when her son was suicidal when this material was being circulated in his high school, the family called police, and police, the first thing they said was, do you remember? We could arrest your son because he's produced pornography. So
what a tone deaf, take a look at the situation.
Right, but police didn't know how to behave. They didn't know, they didn't have a protocol.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to respond. They certainly, their first response wasn't, let's contact Twitter and tell them to take it down. But the point is, there has been no legal regime, so there are no protocols. So outrageous things have happened that have harmed people. The mom of that 13-year-old boy says to this day, her son is not the young man he used to be before this happened to him. And yet, what has happened with our law case? We've lost at several levels. We hope it goes up to the Supreme Court.
I hope so.
But we are losing on it because of Communications Decency Act Section 230, which I know you've talked about in other places. But the point is, this is a true victory because very often legislative solutions move slowly, and this one has moved fast. Senator Cruz and Senator Klobuchar introduced it less than a year ago.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that fast. That's really incredible. And I think, too, what's so important about it, because there have been different versions of, like, quote-unquote, revenge porn, like non-consensual sharing bills passed in different states. But I think by this making it criminal at a federal level, it protects everyone in every state, or can hold perpetrators accountable in every state. And then, like you said, that ability to easily report and have that content removed within 48 hours is so key, because I remember speaking with some Girls Do Porn survivors. So some of you might be familiar with the case of Girls Do Porn, another pornography company where they recruited, lured, deceived, in some cases drugged, essentially sex trafficked women into pornography production. And those videos were surfacing everywhere online, even after the producer of it was put in jail for sex trafficking, even after they won multi-million-dollar litigation against that producer for sex trafficking them into pornography production. But their videos were still surfacing. And I remember we had a meeting with Google about it because they were surfacing in all of these Google searches, and we're saying, can you not find a way? These girls these women, young women, are having to report it again and again and again. And so this problem has just been so egregious. And so for them to finally have that accountability to actually remove the content is so important. Like you said, they can do it all the time with Disney. So they should be able to do it on Masked Survivors. So often when you're working on legislation, especially around online sexual abuse and exploitation, it seems like big tech typically isn't in opposition to any kind of further regulation. But also in this case, Snapchat and Roblox ended up supporting the Take It Down Act, right? Why do you think that is? Or how do you feel like big tech responded to this legislation?
So the support of the First Lady was extremely valuable. First Lady Melania Trump came to Capitol Hill, was briefed by victims. It was a very high-profile visit that she made, well covered in the media. And then President Trump mentioned it in an address to the joint session of Congress. So when you have that kind of high-level support, it's hard for the typical lobbyists who are fighting any kind of regulation of the online space to get much hold. I think those were different developments over the last year, this year, 2025, very important. So the executive branch, the White House weighing in was crucial.
And it's also so interesting because this bill is bipartisan, and it was introduced for the first time it was introduced under the Biden administration, right? Was it introduced?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and it was getting a lot of traction, and then it happened to kind of cross the finish line under the Trump administration, obviously with support of the First Lady. But I think that in some ways shows how so many of these bills, they develop across administrations. And can you just speak to the importance of bipartisanship, and how does that actually work when you're trying to push forward this legislation? And always, I feel like people always kind of want to claim the victory as their own, and we want people to claim victory because we want people to be proud of protection legislation. What are your thoughts on bipartisanship on these
The
issues?
margins are so close in both the House and the Senate. There are almost equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans, and so for a bill to be successful, it has to have support from both parties. There these issues, human trafficking, sexual exploitation, child pornography, these are utterly nonpartisan subjects, right? The victims do not care their party label doesn't matter. And so that is so crystal clear, I think, to the advocates and to the members of Congress that we have been successful in developing these bipartisan partnerships. And also in the Senate side, there's a lot of longevity because people have 6-year terms. And so they're there long enough to learn a lot. Senator Klobuchar is one of the champions, a Democrat who is a prosecutor, tried cases like this. And she's consistently been a great supporter. Senator Cruz, this is so interesting. He was approached by a high school student in Texas who experienced deep fakes. Oh, wow. So a peer of hers produced deep fakes and circulated them to high school, and she didn't even want to go to school anymore. She's so humiliated, and she has fierce parents, and they went to the school administration who felt that they had to have a hands-off attitude because maybe he created these deep fakes at home and circulated them from home, and they're like, it's not really a school problem. Well, sure, it's a school problem because she's getting bullied because of this material. And she personally briefed the senator, and he was appalled, and he took it on. So it's also the importance of constituents alerting their members of Congress to very real-world problems. Isn't it fundamental that our legislators have to protect the safety, the safety and well-being of our citizens? So it's seen in that category, and therefore it is naturally nonpartisan.
Yeah. Thank goodness, too, because it's so wonderful to have something where people can be united on it, where, like you said, it benefits everyone to have a law like this. And there's another incredible victory that just recently happened at the state level, but before we move into, was there anything else on the Take It Down Act specifically that you wanted to make sure we chatted about?
Well, the analogy we like to use is car safety. It takes seat belts and airbags and speed limits and driver's licenses to make sure people in a car are safe. This is the analogy that we have to think about for online reality. We're going to need a lot of different measures to protect youth, but protect all of us from harm online. And this is a first step, and it just shows we've kind of broken the ice. We've educated a lot of members. The House, the speed at which they passed this bill is directly related to the White House championship, but also they're getting more educated, and they're realizing how severe this problem is.
It's unfortunate that they have to be educated, but it is so important because I think we always see that legislation lags, and it lags behind technology, and the technology is developing so rapidly. So it's just, like you said, hopefully an encouraging precursor to even more good legislation.
Exactly.
And so the other incredible victory that we have to talk about today comes from Alabama, and it's the Safer Devices for Kids Act. What does this act do? And I'm glad that you used the analogy of, we need the seatbelts, we need the airbags, because I do think people say, well, you solved it. You passed legislation. You should be done. Close your doors. There's a reason why there's more, is because we need to be addressing it from different angles. And the Safer Devices for Kids Act is very different from the Take It Down Act.
Exactly. The NCOSE Law Center developed this bill back in 2020, and it has passed in one other state, Utah, passed last year in 2024. What it does is says when a smartphone is registered to a minor, automatically the safety features, the filter, should be defaulting to on. And guess what? All these phones we have a filter already buried inside it, like sometimes at the 30 levels down inside the operating system. The filters are on, but they default to off. Now think of all the things that automatically happen when you buy a phone or get a new phone, register a phone to yourself. What wasn't happening is a default to safety. And so this is what Alabama said. They said when devices starting, so that the governor signs the bill, it will become law on June 1st. Every device that's manufactured, every operating system will have to start having this default to safety functionality for any kid in Alabama. Now, what we know, of course, is that geolocation is so sophisticated. These phones know exactly where we are.
Yes.
So when a child or a child's parents registers a phone, whether that be an Android phone or Apple phone, they know that that phone is being registered in Georgia. Mm-hmm. If a Georgia family buys and registers a phone in New York City, it's not going to automatically default to the safety. So that geolocation function is really important.
Yes.
And that's why perhaps we should be doing this at the federal level. Mm-hmm. Like, it is fantastic that Alabama took this leadership role. And we saw in Louisiana, for example, 2 years ago, Representative Lori Schlegel, she introduced age verification as required for pornography platforms. Mm-hmm. It now, 18 other states copy-pasted that law and said pornography platforms need to age verify for kids to get access to this material, which is, we know from academic studies now for decades that it is damaging to brains that are developing. We also believe that it's damaging to human behavior of all people, but especially to kids and their developing brains. So the point is, states are getting frustrated at the lack of a federal solution, and so states are taking on their own problem-solving capacity at the state level. And this new Safer Devices for Kids Act is an excellent solution that we'll see in Alabama. And Representative Chris Sells is the lead sponsor, as well as Senator Chambliss, both longtime advocates for youth and for more corporate accountability.
Mm-hmm. And so those differences are that, the age verification, because I can see sometimes people might get a bit confused about all this different state legislation that's swirling, because the age verification laws are saying that a minor should not be able to the porn site has to verify the age of the child. But the device filters, the Safer Devices for Kids Act, says that Apple, for example, the phone, just turn on all the safety settings by default, which includes some filtering and also privacy protections too, right?
Yes,
for kids.
Yes, some tools to make it easier for parents to have control over the settings.
And that's so easy to do. I mean, Apple, they can probably do that with a single push notification. It's so interesting because have you heard of the term dark UX, dark user design? It's just a phrase for the fact that we know that these devices, I mean, social media platforms too, they're built intentionally to make some actions really easy on your Apple phone. It takes 2 clicks to pay for something, right? Because they want people to use their phone to pay for things. And then they make some things really not so easy. Like anytime that you've been in an app and you're like, how do I unsubscribe from this? And you have to search 100 places and dig and bury, and you scroll to the bottom of the list and you have like 7 clicks. And that's the way that it is right now by default to turn on so many of these safety settings. But from Apple's standpoint, they just can flip a switch and they can just turn them to be on by default. And then I believe with parental supervision, or there's a PIN code provided to parents, they could make a decision, a parent and a child, to remove some of those safety features if they want, is my understanding as well. So the power's in the hands of the people who have the device, but it just defaults it to safe instead of defaulting it to unsafe, because both of those are a choice. Apple's making a choice in what they incentivize, what they make easy when you're using their device. So I just think it's so common sense to have this kind of a solution.
It is. It's common sense, but because big tech fights absolutely any effort to tell them what to do. Literally, a Utah state rep told us that she wanted to understand why Apple refused to come and meet with a group of retailers and manufacturers and interested constituents. And they said to her, we don't want to be seen in a room with legislators telling us what to do.
Wow. Just for optics.
Yeah.
Just for
So
PR.
that helps explain why they will fly people and they will fly lobbyists in to Baton Rouge this morning. We have a hearing on the App Store Accountability Act.
Wow.
Another solution which focuses on the Google Play and Apple App Store. Those lobbyists will come in from abroad and argue that it's too hard and it's going to lose jobs in the state, and they'll say anything.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they're all launching new AI products that are doing new things that no one ever could imagine before. We're just saying there's a couple simple, common sense things you could do. If I was Apple, I would just be doing this on my own terms. That's the way to avoid legislation, is just make it safe from the start so that no one can complain. But they haven't done that, which is just interesting in and of itself. I think, too, another thing that I'm really excited about for this device filter approach is because very often, what you probably hear this all the time with the tech lobbyists, they'll say it's up to the parents. It's the parents' fault. Parents should be doing more. But when you have something like this, now every child who's in Alabama who's getting this phone, by default, they're having these safety settings turned on. Some of these kids don't have the privilege of involved tech-savvy parents who have the time to dig through 100 layers.
Exactly.
Some kids are in foster care. Some kids have parents who are both working full-time and are stressed. And some kids are raised by grandparents. So I think also that is so disingenuous to me when tech lobbyists say it's on the parents, because then that's leaving actually the most vulnerable kids in society even more vulnerable. You're saying only like the top 20%, 10% of kids deserve protections.
Exactly. This is a very democratic solution. It applies to all phones the kids have. We'll see about other solutions will emerge, but we have to educate our legislators that this is a crucial problem that's facing every family's facing this. And you did some of the research, Haley. You know probably better than I, but even platforms like Roblox.
Yeah.
NCOSE has found serious problems with even predators being able to access kids on Roblox, or sexually oriented role play being facilitated by their games.
Yes.
This is outrageous.
Yes.
And so parents think their child is just using Roblox.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, on the device itself, there's damaging material being consumed. So there's no way parents can prevent that from happening if a Roblox is a guilty party. Did you know the UK just raised the Roblox age rating to, I think it's 16 or 17 plus, but they definitely increased it from 13.
Wow, I did not know that.
Earlier this year.
There was a really recent report of someone went in and made a lot of avatars acting as children and just found all these horrific things like simulated sex scenes, predators trying to chat with them. I mean, when creating accounts as kids. And then the Roblox CEO, do you remember what he said?
No.
He said, well, if parents are worried about their kids being on Roblox, just keep your kids off Roblox.
See?
I'm like, but Roblox, it's literally like little block people. It is marketed for children.
Right.
And so then if you make a product that's is marketed for kids, is mostly kids who are on there, but you refuse to make it safe, that's just...
Or your child goes to another person's house.
Yes.
So in Alabama, we work with a marvelous therapist. She's a therapist who's one of the state's experts on young addiction to pornography. Malia Stevens is an activist, advocate, marvelous, and a board member. And Malia tells about a case where she was working with a 7-year-old girl who had been at a neighbor's house, and there was no mom at the house. The friend was being raised by a dad who was working hard, and the girls were looking together at pornography, and the youngster got addicted to it. She stole her teacher's phone in order to get access to a cell phone to watch more pornography.
7?
When her parents cut her off and said took her phone away from her. But Malia describes talking to this child whose feet don't even touch the floor, and she says, Malia said, "Do you understand why your parents are upset? Why they took your phone?" And she said, "I just think everyone should be able to do whatever each other wants to do sexually." This is like a 7-year-old child. So,
Wow.
completely outrageous. And as these terrible, tragic, but also true cases circulate among state legislatures, they have to act.
And that goes to, and you were raising this point earlier, but I think especially with state and federal legislation, could you just speak to the importance of constituents speaking out? Because I do think so many people have these experiences in their family, or themselves personally, or a close friend, and they're upset and they want to engage in solutions, but people feel intimidated by the idea of public policy, by the idea of calling up a legislator's office. Can you just speak to the importance of that? And would you have any tips for people who would want to do that but feel intimidated?
Absolutely. It's crucial. The bill in Alabama passed in large part because a number of citizens organizations got together, left and right, and had a few lobby days where they just all went to the state capitol and went door to door, didn't even have meetings. They just went around and circulated a flyer and said, this is happening to all our kids and grandkids. We have to really take more aggressive steps to protect our kids. Anyone can do it. What's most effective is you band together, like you join another group. And there are new groups constantly springing up. I was talking this morning to the Coalition of Moms in Florida, and they helped pass a bill that makes it illegal to groom a child online. They increased it from a misdemeanor to a felony. Felony is obviously a more severe criminal act, but finding a like-minded organization, even if it's an informal group that meets once a month by Zoom, having an umbrella makes you more effective. And typically any organization, and PTA organizations, or in Utah, this bill was passed with strong support from a parent-teacher association that was a state entity. So banding together with like-minded people, finding a group that you're comfortable with, and usually there's some guidance, or call NCOSE as soon as you get your group together, which could be 5 moms at a kitchen table.
Yes. But and actually do, right? Because we are regularly working in so many different states. And sometimes, I mean, just the other day we were saying, okay, who do we know in this state who would want to speak to this bill and who would want to talk to legislators? So I do think people should contact us if they have personal experience or just vested interest in it. And we can make a list. We can make a list.
Right. And we have what's public at
NCOSE.com.
NCOSE.com
or public at NCOSE.com.
Exactly. We handle those public emails all the time and steer people into the direction of allies who are working in the state level too. As well, though, congressional delegations are available. Most of their policy people are located in D.C. Every member of Congress has a district office, some very often multiple district offices, and you as a citizen can make an appointment to meet with your member of Congress or your senator's district office on a policy issue. Again, gather a few friends and go do a district meeting. It's effective. It's extraordinarily, it's just amazing. Never shocks me. My first job on Capitol Hill was 40 plus years ago. I worked on the Appropriations Committee and for a member of Congress from Massachusetts. And we would meet with absolutely anybody who called and said, I want to meet with you. I care about something. And that's true to this day. And phone calls matter too. I'd say that phone calls matter more than emails.
Wow. Okay.
Every member of Congress and the U.S. Senate, they tally. At the end of every day, they tally who has called and what they called about. So calling offices is really, it's old-fashioned, but calling offices, those calls are registered, and what you support or what you oppose is registered. The emails, not so much.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so get over the phonophobia. I in high school I did a presentation on phonophobia.
Did you have it?
I feel like all millennials were like, "Oh, calling on the phone. We'll
Really?
just give you a text." Maybe that's just me, but you got to do it. Got to do it.
And it's fun.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Eleanor, I just have to say thank you again. I know
Oh,
you've
it's fun
been
to
so
chat with you like
tireless.
this.
You've been so tireless in your advocacy for this. And I just feel like it's hard to overstate, in my mind, it's hard to overstate how historic and important, especially the Take It Down Act passing. Having a bill pass that puts a requirement on platforms to step up their game is very rare. Hopefully it won't be rare as we're working increasingly to have even better requirements for safety and protection and prevention. But it's a really significant movement forward. And I think it shows that it is possible to have common sense regulation on big tech.
But we won't flag Kids Online Safety Act.
Yes,
We expect it to be reintroduced.
What comes next? What comes next? What can we get excited about?
I think the Law Center believed the Take It Down Act was one of the most significant new bills. Right up there, too, is the Kids Online Safety Act. It's, again, very bipartisan. It passed the Senate last July, 91-3. I mean, just overwhelming support. And then there just wasn't enough time to move it on the House side, especially during a presidential election year. So Kids Online Safety Act will be back. It's bipartisan. It's necessary. It creates a duty of care. These digital platforms and services must center the safety of kids. Instead, what do? They roll out products before they even focus group them, before they even test them on kids.
Yes.
So that has to end. And Kids Online Safety Act has this really smart approach of creating a duty of care, much like, a hotel has to have keys and security and codes and fire alarms. And that hotel has a legal duty of care to the guests. And that's how digital platforms should be with our youth.
So if anyone's looking for a chance to get involved in legislation, get involved on
COSE.
COSE. Email us, public@ncose.com, for how you can get involved with COSE. As soon as it passes, we will let you know.
It's going to be introduced.
Well,
like any week
first.
now.
Introduce first. I'm getting ahead of myself. And then it will pass, and we will. But you guys can be a part of that by engaging. So we will. That's a wonderful thing to look forward to, Eleanor. And you will be back before too long on the podcast for us to talk about our blueprint for American
whatever you want,
safety
Haley.
Online and in so many other ways. So we will be back to talk about the Restoring Dignity Directive, which will launch soon. So everyone can
And that
stay
is more of a
tuned.
focus on dysfunction.
Yes.
And how the patchwork quilt of state approaches has created quite a dysfunctional system when it comes to addressing human trafficking, unfortunately.
And we will untangle that dysfunction another time. Thank you so much, Eleanor, and everyone. Thank you for joining us. I encourage you to like and rate and share this episode with all of your friends and even a couple of your enemies. And thank you so much for joining us in ending sexploitation.